want to talk about what?
I want to talk about Season 2 of Justice Talk, where it's just us talking.
And what is Justice Talk?
Justice Talk is a podcast where we talk about the Douglas County Sheriff's Office and the community we serve. Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Justice Talk. I'm Deputy Jason Blanchard with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, joined by Sergeant Jeff Miller, Deputy Sean Heidman, and Y.E.S.S Coordinator Phyllis Harvey. How's everybody doing on this fine day?
We're doing good.
Great, thanks.
Great to be here, thanks.
Yep, so it is a beautiful day out there, but I just got to put it out there. Today we're talking about the Y.E.S.S program, which is the... I have it written down. I never know what it means. So
Youth education. It's Youth Education Safety in Schools program.
Youth Education and Safety in Schools program. And I got to tell you, with that introduction, with that whole program, the Y.E.S.S program, it's something I'm passionate about. And just hearing the lessons that you guys have taught. I've got two kids myself. One is 6, one is 8. Just starting to think about approaching the ages that the Y.E.S.S program becomes pertinent. So that being said, I mean, do you guys have kids for yourself? Like, where are you guys at with kids?
Well, my kids went through the DARE program back when it was still in effect. So
I think you made fun of me earlier because I went through the DARE program.
My kids, yeah.
Yeah, and I did too. That's I'm 40 though, man.
When I was a kid, it was just the Just Say No campaign was coming out. So
and it was a good program, generally speaking. So how about you, Phyllis? You have any kids?
Yeah, he's 25. He went through the DARE program as well.
Right.
Yeah.
How about you, Sean?
I've got 2 little ones. Long way to go. They're not quite in school yet, but someday. I'm thinking ahead.
That's good. That's good. Well, let's go and just dive right into today's topic. We're here talking about, again, the Y.E.S.S program. I'm nervous about raising kids in this kind of dark water that we have to raise kids in these days. Mm-hmm. I know when I was growing up, I was more of I wasn't a troublemaker, but I was devious, and my kids thought I was an angel. My kids thought I was a saint.
Yeah, mine did too until they got older, and then I kind of told them. Once they were out of high school, I told them some of the stories about what I did. So,
we probably shouldn't delve into stories necessarily, but that being said, let's go ahead and just start off with what the Y.E.S.S program is and kind of how it started. Sean, how about you take it away?
Sure. So the Y.E.S.S program has been around for about 10 years, and it was actually in response to the DARE program. What we found here in Douglas County was the DARE program wasn't as effective as we had hoped, so we decided to be creative and come up with our own program that we could really branch out and hit all the points that DARE wasn't hitting at the time. So that was about 10 years ago. Y.E.S.S has been around for a decade now, and it's recently expanded to a national level. So we've got literally agencies all over the country that are picking up the Y.E.S.S program as we speak. And there's a reason for that. It's a great program. Rather than just focus on the no, don't do this, it's really, really emphasizing social emotional learning and emotional intelligence and good, healthy alternatives to the negative behaviors.
That is a great model, in my opinion, because I remember going through the DARE program, and it basically became with a no. What's the first thing that kids or teens do? They do exactly what we as parents tell them not to do anymore, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So when it's no, they don't get it necessarily. I remember DARE being almost just a drug education program. So when I was going into high school, I was like, well, now I know what drugs there are. Cool. Not that I ever used any. I did not, but still, there were plenty of people that took it that way.
That's what the research actually told us, that particular model of the DARE program, that's exactly what was happening. And that's why the Colorado Department of Education and the Douglas County School District came to Sheriff Weaver then at the time and said, we need to do something different. And that's why we worked together to come up with something that was comprehensive, that was using research-based strategies, evidence-based strategies in order to do what DARE wasn't doing well and incorporate what it did do well. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
So, Sean, you've been teaching, Y.E.S.S for about 3 years now?
That's correct. Yep, 3 years.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the programming that you guys work with?
Sure. So in a nutshell, Y.E.S.S goes over 3 major topics. We start out by talking with the kids about relationships, and that's going to entail boundaries, bullying, all that sort of thing. Then we also go into digital citizenship, which is very, very important in today's world, where we get more into what they're doing on devices and how to stay safe while using internet and social media and all that sort of thing. And then we wrap it up with substance use, which is going to be all of our drugs, alcohol, that sort of thing, and addictions.
I got to tell you, the one that really scares me when I've sat through your program, the one that I'm lost. I consider myself pretty digitally savvy when it comes to today's world, but then I found out all the things when it comes to the digital citizenship that kids are using to both hide or work around or what they're doing in general with the devices that they have in their hands. And I'm straight frightened. I'm pretty sure my kids aren't getting a phone until they're out of the house.
I think with the Y.E.S. program, I think one of the big things for me is the fact that you're educating parents.
Yeah.
It's not just the kids, but it's telling the parents, hey, these are what kids are doing. This is things to look out for. And that's something that the DARE program didn't do. You know, your kids would go to DARE during school, and the only thing a parent knew about is what they did what they told you about. So
Right. Yeah. True.
Again, when it comes to just digital citizenship, we don't want to go into a lot of detail. We really hope that the parents in general will come to one of your citizen academies, not citizen academy, parent academies.
Yeah.
That's really what the purpose of today is to give a slight glimpse of what you guys do, but then make it so you guys understand that there is a whole education behind this, parents and youth, that'll be able to show you the things that you need to see and what you need to know as your kid is growing up.
Yeah, and that's really what we strive to do, is not only reach the children in our county, but reach the parents as well. And that's one of my favorite things in teaching the lessons is when I hear from the parents that their child came home and talked about what we discussed in class, and they worked together to find ways to avoid the dangerous things and to find healthy alternatives. So it's great to hear that it's collaborative between students and their parents. Now, we don't get that with everyone, of course. Sometimes the students are really apprehensive about coming home and talking about this. Sometimes it's because they're doing some of those things. But we do make an effort to get the parents involved as much as possible. And that's why we offer multiple parent academies throughout the year.
Well, I think that's something that's important is I think the more that parents are involved in what their kids are doing, I think that ends up better for the kids in the long run.
Well, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of parents thinking that their kid is their best friend these days, and that is just a scary notion if you think about it. And to the point where parents are buying the beer, alcohol, vapes, whatever they're buying for their kids,
right?
Because they want to be that cool parent. It's just not okay. Like we're not there to be, as parents, we're not there to be their friend. We're there to guide them to be a responsible human being is really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Yeah, and I think in that you can still be a friend and be a parent at the same time. And that's where a lot of parents seem to lose focus, is because they don't necessarily know how to discipline, because, we're in an age of litigation, and when their child says, well, I don't have to do this. You can't make me do this. What, are you going to sue me? That sort of thing. Right. Some parents aren't sure what direction to go there.
Right.
And that's where we help them out with the academies a little bit more too, to just let them know it's okay to be a parent. It's okay to be in charge.
I heard a 13-year-old tell his mom the other day that you can't take my phone away from me. Because if you do, I'll sue you. And I know the judge will side with me. I'm like, oh, no, you're so wrong. You're so wrong. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny. A lot of kids don't have that full understanding of what a parent is able to do legally. They think they hear from a kid like, you can't spank me, for example. And I don't necessarily want to go into if that's right or wrong, but legally, a parent is allowed to spank. You're allowed to take appropriate disciplinary action for something that the kid has done to try to guide and teach. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit more about some of the programming you guys do. I mean, you cover a wide variety of topics, way too much for us to actually share here. So why don't we just delve a little bit more into each one of those topics?
Sure. As far as relationships, as I said, one of the big things that we cover is establishing healthy boundaries, and that's a huge one today with teenagers, especially. Is we're seeing a breakdown of that. We're seeing less and less personal boundaries, both physical boundaries and emotional boundaries, where kids are just giving way too much of themselves to people who they later find out are manipulating them, that are exploiting them. So we need to teach kids to protect themselves, not just from the boogeyman out there, but also from some of their peers sometimes, unfortunately.
Sure, and in that same thing, it's a big topic with teens these days is going to be bullying. Is that in the relationship section?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. We cover bullying extensively, both regular bullying, which falls under our crime of harassment here in Colorado, and then we also talk a lot about cyberbullying. And cyberbullying also falls under harassment, but there's a special subsection of that law that just pertains to cyberbullying because we've had so many problems with it.
Yeah, and one of the things, again, and if we have to pull this out, we will, but that I thought was interesting is just consent. There's a big section that we talked about in consent these days, and it is a whole lot different than when I was a teenager, any of us were teenagers. You want to talk a little bit about that and what it looks like?
Sure. So last year there was actually a House bill passed that deals almost exclusively with consent, basically saying that our school districts will cover it in some manner. So we took it upon ourselves to add that to the Y.E.S.S program, be proactive about it, and we really want kids to understand what is okay, what's not okay, and again, that they need to protect themselves as far as consent.
Now, when we say consent, we're talking sexual activities. Is it correct?
Correct. Yes. And when we teach that in the classroom, obviously it's age appropriate. We don't go in there and talk to sixth graders about sexual intercourse and that sort of thing per se.
Not sex education.
Yes.
No.
Correct. That's not our job. But what we do is we explain the whole spectrum of consent and how sexual activity, or what we call intimate contact, can mean a lot of different things. Anything from touching, holding hands, and kissing, all the way up to the end of that spectrum, which is going to be sex.
Very good.
And that's something that's talked about during the Parent Academy too? Is that kind of stuff?
We do touch on that in the Parent Academy, not quite as much as we explain with the children,
Right,
because most parents know the boundaries
Sure.
of consent and all that.
Right.
Well, yes and no, because again, when I was there, I was surprised because when I was in high school, when I wanted to kiss a girl, I'd have all the butterflies and everything, and I'd go in hoping for the best and see what happened. But when it comes to now, it's supposed to be very clearly, can I kiss you? You use words like, can I kiss you?
Right.
Are you okay if I kiss you? And then you have to judge things like body language from the answer. They might say yes, but if the body language doesn't say the same thing, it was a complicated world we live in, really.
Definitely. And I would say that's less of a legal obligation. Here, I'll start over.
You're good. I can edit my personal mic out. You're good.
Okay. I'd say that's less of a legal obligation and more of a suggestion as far as the kissing part. But I always tell the kids in the classroom, I wish I had had that growing up, because just like you, I was never told, oh, you should ask for the kiss. And I go as far as telling them, personal anecdotes and how I was sitting in a car one time with a girl and thought I read all the signs correctly and leaned in for it and found out really quickly that wasn't the case. She just saw me as a friend. But in hindsight, had I known I had that option to actually ask about it, would have saved a lot of embarrassment.
Sure it would.
I think kids really connect with that. They're like, oh, yeah. I've been in that situation too. So we do like to tell some personal background, personal stories when it's pertinent. And I think that goes along with the kids when they can see how it's affected us as well.
Very good. And when it comes to bullying, again, I'm sorry if I'm bouncing around a little bit here, but my mind gets going crazy with this stuff because, again, I've got kids that are facing the same stuff. My kids are younger, so I've got a third grader and a kindergartner, and they're already dealing with bullying issues. Wow. So in today's world, can you give just a brief anecdote on how somebody that you are teaching, you're telling them how to deal with bullying if they're actually a victim or doing it themselves?
Sure. I think as far as our lessons go, from what I've found, the most impactful lesson is with our sixth graders, and that's when at the end of the lesson, after we explain what bullying is, what it isn't, how you can protect yourself, I actually let one of the kids come up and bully me for a few minutes, and the whole class gets to watch that and watch me respond to it. And basically what I want to show them is, you don't let the bully get to you. Even if it hurts on the inside, you don't show it on the outside, because eventually they're either going to get bored, frustrated, or confused and just walk away if they're not getting the result that they're looking for. So once kids can see that and actually see us doing that in person, I think that leaves a mark.
Well, I saw this one, I think it was a TED Talk, where his response to a bully, this girl was just tearing him apart, and his response, again, it's not the normal response you expect. It wasn't like, "How dare you say that? Let's fight," or anything like that, or or "I'm going home and crying," or anything. He would just basically say, if the guy said, "You're ugly," be like, I am ugly, but it was interesting the way they did it, but it just immediately disarmed the bully. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's the way to do it, but it was interesting how when you don't give the reaction that the bully expected, that they don't continue to bully you anymore. They're looking for a reaction, really.
Exactly, yeah, and we give them a lot of different tactics to use. I personally shy away from agreeing with the bully. We used to tell kids that, but the problem today is social media. And if you think about it, when someone's being bullied, what are the odds that somebody else is standing in the background recording it on their phone?
Right.
So the last thing we want is for, a kid to say, "Yes, I'm stupid. Yes, I smell. Yes, I'm ugly," while that's being recorded and that gets thrown up on social media, because that's going to devastate them even more.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Again, this world is different, and everybody's got a cell phone. It's something we as law enforcement need to worry about, but teens the same way. If anything happens at school, somebody's recording it.
Right.
Very good.
What are we doing as far as vaping?
Great question. We're doing everything that we can. And so with vaping, what we found through a lot of research is you can only go so far with giving kids all of the negative consequences, including the physical.
They're fully aware of what the physical effects are now.
Right.
I would think so.
Right. And we haven't had a whole lot of luck in the past focusing on that, because with the teenage brain, last part to develop is the frontal lobe, which is responsible for impulse control, among a lot of other things. So
that explains a lot about my youth.
right? Yeah, just remember that frontal brain part of it. And as you may know, the brain continues to grow through the mid to late 20s is what we're finding now. They actually consider that age adolescence. So we thought adolescence ended at 13, 14. It's actually going through to your 20s now, because your brain is still growing. So what we found works the best is getting on the same side as our kids and saying, "Look, we're in this together. Here's why you shouldn't do this." And then we explain that the big companies out there, the vaping industry, is doing an excellent job of deceiving all of us and basically using us as pawns in their little experiment to make money off of us.
Right. It's nothing but dollar signs.
Exactly. And I think once kids understand these companies don't care about your health at all. All they care about is your money. And they want you as young as possible, because think about it. The younger you are, the longer you're going to throw your money at them. That's why they're targeting kids. Once we can get on the same page there and help them understand we're here to help you, we're all on the same team, I think they're a lot more likely to take the information and say, maybe this isn't such a good idea.
Well, and one of the things, when we were teens, again, the cigarettes were extremely popular. And then once all of the negative effects started coming to light and people started making it uncool, then suddenly it just completely disappears. But then the tobacco industry needed to fund themselves somehow, so they found a different way, is really what it came down to. They adapted to the environment they were in. Now it doesn't even smell bad, so look at what you can get away with now.
It was marketed as a safe alternative.
It is.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And you mentioned a statistic before this. How many did you say?
The latest death toll that I've read as of the end of December was 54 deaths from vaping. So that's astonishing. And if you think about it with cigarettes, I wasn't alive back then before we realized how dangerous they were, but I don't think anyone ever heard statistics like that right off the bat. Right. I mean, we're hearing stories of people going into the ER and the ICU of hospitals after just vaping for a couple weeks.
Right.
Wow. So obviously this stuff is not helping anybody.
Well, not to mention that's just deaths. Have you seen some of the stuff like where their jaws blown off and all kinds of crazy stuff like that? Holy cow! And popcorn lung and all these weird diseases coming along.
Yeah, and that's what we tell the kids. You're literally walking around with a ticking time bomb in your backpack or your pocket or your bra or wherever you want to hide that thing. You're playing with fire. It can blow up anytime.
Right. I know when my kids were in high school, my daughter would tell me people were doing it in class.
Yeah.
Right behind
Yeah.
the teacher would be writing something on the dry erase board or something like that, and kids were doing it in class.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about, I'm going to pick on Jewel a little bit. I know everybody picks on Jewel, but in my opinion, they designed it that way on purpose. They knew what they were doing. It looks like a big flash drive. You know, how is an adult going to benefit from walking around with something that looks like a flash drive? That doesn't help us at all, right? But children, they go into the classroom, and like you said, they literally plug it into their laptop while they're sitting in class to charge it, and teachers walk right by not knowing what it is. So I have a feeling the industry knew what they were doing and realized, well, this will get it into the schools, and once it's in the schools, kids can show it to their friends, and we started a whole new generation of addiction.
Well, and it's going to probably be real similar to cigarettes. As with addiction, then you've got to start the education, and then once education starts kicking in and people start catching on, then hopefully they'll actually nix this whole thing and realize tobacco in general just needs to kind of go away.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I think we all need to take a multifaceted approach. We can't just prosecute, and we can't just go after it and think it's going to go away, because like you said, addiction is a real problem. So we need to also look at the addiction piece and help people recover from that addiction and let kids know we are here to help you.
And we're actually doing some of that, working with the Douglas County Healthy Youth Coalition and the District Attorney's Diversion Program, the Y.E.S.S program specifically, working with them, trying to come up with alternatives, because these kids are telling our Y.E.S.S instructors, the school resource officers, that they're addicted. And it isn't that they want to keep doing it, they can't stop.
Right.
And so instead of giving them a ticket and they pay a fine, whatever, that doesn't help the addiction. And so working together to try to get them that addiction therapy, the tobacco cessation programs, those kind of things, instead of having them in front of a magistrate and, wasting that court time, that kind of thing. I mean, that doesn't help anybody.
Right, yeah, it doesn't address the addiction part.
Exactly.
I'm so nervous to raise my kids.
You'll
Take
be
a deep breath.
fine.
Take a deep
You'll
breath.
be fine.
Well, and I think it's going to be a lot about, like it is on, and where I think it's important that what you guys are doing is it is parent responsibility to get them to get through this stuff.
Yeah, and that's why we really want parents to come out to the parent academies to learn about this stuff and be able to ask our instructors questions. And there is no stupid question. We were all parents of little kids. You have little kids now, and we learn from each other. That's how we learn how to do things better. So coming and actually seeing it and hearing it and learning about what we're teaching the kids, and then being able to ask those questions, whether it's in front of the whole group or privately, whatever. I mean, that's what we're there for, to try to help parents so that they
I think it's
can do
important.
better.
The parents know what they're looking for. Because
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
right. Like Jewel has it looking like a thumb drive. If a parent sees a thumb drive, okay, that's a thumb drive. It's
Yeah.
something for school.
Right.
But if they know that it could be something else, and they know what to look for.
Yeah.
Speaking of recognition, what's your opinion on parents searching their kids' rooms?
Do it. Do it as much as you like.
Every day.
Please do it. Yeah. What we usually find is the parents who take a backseat approach are the ones who have the most problems.
Right.
So what you need to do is just establish that discipline early and stay consistent with it.
Right. As long as the kids know what to expect.
Yeah. Trusted
I think,
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And Jason, speaking back to your fear that you were just talking about a minute ago, I'm the same way, and I think we always need to kind of take a little step back and realize every generation, you always say, oh, the kids these days, but we've always had problems in every generation. This is just a new batch of problems that we're dealing with, but I don't think it's something that we can't handle. And I think we just need to stay on top of it. We need to communicate with each other as parents and help support each other, and we'll do fine.
I love that. It is comforting to know that there is going to be resources and help and people working together to get through all of this. It's a super important part. Do we want to address anything in digital citizenship at all? Do we want to, we can talk the basics like sexting and that kind of stuff real quick if you want to?
Sure.
Okay. So first and foremost, the big point is going to be if it hits the internet in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't go away, no matter what it is.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think
it's
that's
permanent.
a good place to start with the whole conversation.
Definitely. And that includes Snapchat. That's what we always have to explain is just because you have a disappearing app does not mean that it disappears forever. That's up in the servers. There are ways to still get that information. What I always tell them is aside from that, think like the bad guys. You know, if you want to save somebody's picture that they just sent to you and intended to be erased, what can you do? Well, with Snapchat, you can always do a screenshot, but recently Snapchat came out with a new part of their program that will tell the other person if you screenshot. It will tell the senders that you screenshot that image. So me being the bad guy, rather than screenshot, I'm just going to take another device and click real quick. I take a picture of it with my friend's phone or my camera, and they're none the wiser. They think it's gone forever, and now I can do whatever I want with it. And that's what's so scary, and that's where we're seeing a lot of the problems coming about is these kids think this is here and then gone forever. No, it's out there forever. And, you know, with teenagers, they break up, one's mad at the other one. What's the first thing they might do if they've got a nude of their former?
Hey, check this
You know,
out.
what I didn't know recently, it's kind of scary, is like Snapchat has a private file in there or some type of function in there that you can password protect it. And if you enter the password wrong several times, like a parent trying to get into it, it erases it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, there are some other apps out there that even go a step further where if you, as the parent, try to hack into that and you put in the wrong password, it will literally take a picture of you and send it to them so they can see that you were trying to break into their apps. It's scary.
Good.
So, I mean, some of these apps, I mean, kids can hide stuff from parents, and it's designed not to have parents see it.
Yeah. So what we tell parents all the time is if you look on your kid's phone, which again you can do, please do, and you see 2 or 3 calculators on there, it might be a red flag, right? Or you know, there's always something else with the icons. But when you see something repeated that looks like it would be the same app over and over, chances are one of those is just a front for what we call a vault app, where they're hiding information.
Is there any way that parents can control the app download ability on a phone? Do we know of anything like that?
There are multiple ways. And again, I'm not going to go into whether or not you should do that. That's every parent's personal decision. But there are all sorts of programs out there that you can download. I believe some of them are free. Some of them are for pay. But you can do that, and you can actually track what they're doing on the phone. And for the most part, it's the parent's phone, not the kid's phone, right?
Right.
The kid is just borrowing it.
Well, and a lot of parents out there need to know that as long as they are under your authority, as long as you're their parent and they're under 18, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy when it comes to any of this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
So as far as the sexting, I would just say what most of us don't realize is how far that can go and how it can literally destroy a child's life, because they might send what they call them nudes typically, a nude image or video to, you know, somebody that they're interested in, that they want to date. And once that gets into the wrong hands, it can get really, really bad really fast.
Right.
Sextortion is one of the biggest problems we see now, which is basically blackmailing. Once somebody gets a hold of that image, they blackmail the child and say, if you don't do exactly what I say, I'm going to send this out to all of your friends. I'm going to send this out to your family members. I'm going to send it to your church group.
Well, I've heard of people that were 10 years out of high school in a professional field that somebody came up with a picture and said, I'm going to release it. I'm going to send it to people.
Yeah.
Unless you do this for me. Or, you know, they extort them.
Yeah. A story like that came out just about a year ago about a doctor.
Yeah.
And it ended up going out to a bunch of her patients. Can you imagine as a doctor, your
That's
patients?
what I'm thinking about,
Yeah, scary.
Yeah, I mean, you're ruined. You basically ruined that doctor's life, because who really wants to go to that doctor now?
Right. And that just speaks to, again, like we said, it's out there forever.
Right.
And we really need to teach kids, you have to think beyond the now. You have to think of how this is going to affect your future.
Well, and it's funny because in high school, everybody thinks they found their one. That like, you know, I'm in love. I love this person so much, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life. They'll never hurt me.
Right.
Until next week when that person found somebody else they like. The high school, and don't get me wrong, there are some people that do have their high school sweetheart and are married and have a great life. But for the most part, you don't really meet that one until a little later.
Yeah.
Is what it comes down to. So just know that, hey, when you're married and whatnot, it's probably still not a good idea to do anything like this, because you just never know who will get a hold of any of those files.
Yeah, yeah. And I tell the kids that. I say sexting's a little different for adults than it is for children because it's not considered child pornography. If I wanted to sext my wife, I could. I don't. I realize how dumb that is, and I would never put that stuff out there. But it's for kids, it takes it a step further. You literally cannot do this. It's breaking the law.
Well, I don't think the parents understand, or even a lot of kids don't understand that if somebody sends you one of those pictures, that you can get in trouble for that too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So under the current law, they have up to 72 hours to bring that to us and say, look, somebody sent this to me. I don't know why. I don't want it. We'll have them erase it from their devices and their accounts, and that's the end of the story for them. Then they don't get in trouble. Right. But if they don't bring it to us and we find it a month later and they say, well, I promise I was going to erase it today, they can't actually get in trouble for that, for the possession.
Yeah, and that's a serious crime.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's child pornography. It's
Yeah.
And then the last step I would just touch on with the sexting piece is once that sextortion piece is in place, we're talking about the bad guys now. We're talking about the sexual predators out there, the pedophiles. Once they start blackmailing kids, a lot of times kids don't realize there's an alternative. They don't realize they can come to us for help.
Right.
So they end up doing what this person told them to do, and that's where we see human trafficking come in. And a lot of parents have heard of human trafficking, but unless you've been to one of our academies or really researched this, you probably don't know too much about it. And yet it's one of the largest crimes out there. It's the second biggest moneymaker for criminals internationally, right behind drug trafficking. And number 3 is weapons. So if you think about that, gun trafficking is less than human trafficking. We're dealing with a real problem here. And it's not like the old days where a kid is going to, be playing in the park and the creepy van pulls up and says, hey, you want some candy? Come in my van. That still happens, but in over 80% of the cases we see, the bad guys are contacting kids through their social media. So that's where that all starts.
Yeah, and people need to understand it can happen here.
Yeah.
And it does.
has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very real problem. This is one of those crimes. It doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter, what age you are. Even if you're 11 years old, you can still become a victim of this. And the average age of victims is about 12 to 14. So they're really targeting young kids when it comes to human trafficking.
And again, it's going to be parents educating these kids to make them understand that they don't fall into these traps. It's going to be that conversation, that open conversation between kids and parents to be able to say, we have to have these conversations in general. They need to be had so that they know what to look out for, because a parent might come across this but not make it to one of the parent academies, which they absolutely should. But if they don't get to that and they hear this, now they can hopefully understand they need to start looking into some conversations they need to have with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
So the last topic you guys really hit on majorly is going to be substances.
Right. And substance it's pretty all-encompassing. Substance use deals with drugs, alcohol. We explain alcohol is a drug because a lot of people don't consider it that, but it's just another form of drug that you happen to drink. And then we talk about the addiction piece. We talk about the brain development and how it affects your brain, how it affects your body in different ways. We go into the legal aspects of it. Once you get caught, how that's going to change your future and limit your opportunities. So that's a big eye-opener for kids too.
Right, and that's something I think a lot of kids, especially in high school, don't think about. Like 2 years from now, depending on college and whatnot, there's usually a five-year minimum for most employers that'll say that, have you used a drug within this time. And a lot of people will, well, I smoked weed last week, but it's legal here. But that doesn't affect our job. I can tell you that much. We can't become a deputy if we've used it in the last 5 years.
Right.
So there's a lot of employers out there that you may be trying to get on that might just do that drug test still that you need, or just do a polygraph that'll say, have you ever used drugs? It's things you need to know that this will really affect your future.
Mm-hmm. And remember too, just because something is legal does not mean it's safe, and it doesn't mean that it's appropriate to use all the time. There's no reason you should abuse a drug, including alcohol, just because you are of legal age to use it. So, I know we're working on raising the vaping age to 21. I think that's a first step, but kids also need to understand just because you've reached this age doesn't mean it's like a coming of age where now you're supposed to use this drug.
It's not safe now that you're 21.
Exactly.
It doesn't change it. Right. Yeah. So what would you say is the biggest substance issue in that age group that we're talking right now so far?
Well, traditionally, it's been alcohol. We see alcohol so much in our schools, not necessarily in the schools, but among that age group. And if you think about it, it's a lot of that is just the accessibility of it. I mean, how many of us have alcohol in our houses that's not locked up, whether it's in the fridge, in the wine cabinet, whatever the case, liquor cabinet. Kids can get their hands on it pretty easily in most of their homes. And I ask them that. When I'm in the classroom, I say, how many of you have alcohol in your house? And almost every hand goes up. So that's something we need to understand is they are using alcohol quite a bit because it's so easy to get a hold of. Vapes are another one. I think vapes, if we don't get on track with this, vapes are probably going to surpass alcohol as the number one pretty soon here. And a lot of that's accessibility too, because you think about it, with age 18 being legal for vaping, how many seniors in high schools are 18? And then they sell them to younger kids and it just becomes an epidemic.
Marijuana, we always hear about it. It's obviously prevalent in the high school ages, but not necessarily the ages you're talking to with 6th to 9th graders.
We do see it with the high schoolers. We also see it sometimes in our middle schools. That has been an issue in the past, continues to be an issue sometimes. And a lot of that tends to be just the vibe that people in Colorado have around marijuana. You know, it's legal here, so it's safe. It's not a big deal. It's naturally grown out of the ground. All of these are myths. I mean, it's not even natural anymore. This is a GMO we're talking about. The levels of THC, which is the ingredient, the psychoactive ingredient that makes you high, are through the roof today.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
if you looked
touch
at
this
it, what
stuff.
it was, 20 years ago, or when we were in high school, the THC levels are totally different.
Oh, yeah.
than what they are now.
Yeah, it was about 7% THC if you smoked a joint back in
Right.
the 80s. Today, you smoke a joint, you're going to get about 35% THC, and that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, smoking a joint, that's rarer and rarer these days. What most of these kids are getting their hands on are the concentrates, and that's when they extract the THC oil out of the marijuana plant in a high doses. So you can get over 90% THC from a single dose. It's
And they're
insane.
using those, and they're using that in their vapes.
Yes.
Well, what is your opinion on their accessibility? How are they getting their hands on this stuff? Is it the dealer out on the corner? Is it parents? What do you think?
That's another question I often ask them, and the common answer I get is other people in the school, older brothers and sisters, or sometimes, unfortunately, parents. And something else we need to think about is if you are of legal age, if you're a parent and you have edibles in your house, make sure those are out of sight, out of mind where a kid can't get a hold of those. Or if you feel comfortable doing so, tell your kid about it and say, I want to make sure that you never touch this and accidentally eat it, because we hear so many horror stories of kids getting a hold of a bag of gummy bears or cookies and thinking it's just a treat, and they get really, really sick off of that.
Well, and a dose is like a single gummy bear in quotations. Well, a kid gets their hands on a bag full of gummies, they're going to eat 15.
Oh, yeah.
That's what kids do.
Yeah, I remember a story just last year in Ohio where that happened. Elementary school kids, one of them thinking it was just candy, brought it to school, and something like 12 to 15 kids were rushed to the ER. Thankfully, nobody died, but they were in really bad shape because they were just munching those things like candy.
Well, forever, I've been in law enforcement for so long that, for the most part, marijuana always is known to mellow people out. I don't know how many people I fought on alcohol. Never fought anybody that was under the influence of just marijuana, because it just mellows them out, until the edibles came along. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some people do some really, really weird and aggressive behaviors when they're eating edibles, because, they eat, a half a brownie is a serving. Well, they just ate like 5 servings, and they get pretty violent.
Yeah, and it's what we call THC psychosis, where they literally suffer from a temporary psychosis from that. They don't even know what they're doing. And we've had multiple deaths right here in Colorado from that. Marijuana is not one of those drugs that you're going to take too much of and just fall over dead like heroin or something, but we have had quite a few deaths from THC psychosis where they make a choice that they can't come back from.
What about opioids?
Another big problem that we see, that tends to be one that they get out of their own parents' medicine cabinet. So parents who are listening, please make sure that's away from your children and make sure they understand the dangers of it as well. Unfortunately, as was the case with my cousin years and years ago, sometimes it comes from the doctor. Sometimes a child breaks his leg or her leg, playing a sport or whatever. Doctor gives them a bottle full of Percocet and says, take these till you don't need them anymore, till you feel better. And that starts that whole addiction process. I lost a cousin to that, and she eventually turned to heroin when she couldn't get her hands on the pills anymore years and years later.
I don't really want to end on that note. That's a hard note. But
I think we want to talk about. I think we got. Let's talk about these parent academies.
Sure.
When do they happen, and where can they sign up for it? And
So parents can actually email me to RSVP at pharvey@dcsheriff.net, and we will have one on February 12th, April 9th, and August 25th, and October 29th. They're all at the Highlands Ranch substation from 11:30 to 1.
And those are on weekdays, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, they're all on weekdays, kind of over the lunch hour. And we're really fortunate to have a lot of community partners. The Rotary of Castle Pines and Denver Springs, they provide lunch so that...
That's nice.
Yeah, so parents can actually come and they can have lunch and get the education at the same time, because we know everybody's really busy. We've tried doing them all different times of day, days of the week, whatever, and this seems to be helping. And when we can get the dates out there ahead of time, that seems to be helping, so that people kind of know and they know where they're at. But the Y.E.S. instructors also do them at some of the schools. So if a school makes a special request, like Deputy Heidman, he works at, say, Ben Franklin Academy, and they decide for their school that they want to do their own parent academy, then they'll schedule that and they'll market it to that parent community so that they can come to their school. And if there's certain issues that are pertinent just for that school, then they can have those types of conversations.
Yeah, because earlier last year we actually did a Facebook Live on a Y.E.S. Parent Academy, and
that was a parent luncheon. So
it was a parent luncheon.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually learned a lot that I wish I would have known.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I first started getting scared, and why I want to go to each one of these different luncheons and parent academies from now on.
Well, you're totally invited. We'd love to scare you some more. So as far as the dates for this coming year, currently we've got February 12th, April 9th, August 25th, and October 29th. And those dates can always change, but as of now, that's when we're going to be hosting our mini academies here at the substation of the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. And then we'll also be hosting, as Phyllis said, in a lot of our local schools in the evenings.
You can go to our website, dcsheriff.net, and you can search for Y.E.S. program, and those dates are on there. And usually before we have a parent academy, we'll send stuff out on social media, so be on Facebook and Twitter and Nextdoor that we're going to be hosting one. So
and the best part of the academies, they're free.
Yeah,
you don't have to pay a penny for it. We just ask that you RSVP ahead of time so we know how many are coming.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, this has been just very eye-opening, very fun to just sit down and have these conversations. We appreciate you both coming out. Thanks so much. Just the takeaway message for today. What do you think?
Just stay proactive. Stay proactive in your kid's life. This is definitely a winning battle. As long as you keep working towards that goal of keeping your kids safe, you're going to do just fine. Don't sit back and feel like you're too overwhelmed to handle this. We can all handle it. And like I said earlier, get support from other parents. We need to work together on this.
Well, I have a couple more questions.
Oh, sure.
Phyllis, you have some other programs that you're involved with also.
Yeah, so the Y.E.S. program, obviously the meat of it is the instructors in the schools. And we started in only 5 middle schools, and very quickly, within a few years, we added in all of the local police departments. So everybody in the Douglas County School District is teaching the Y.E.S. program. But we were also asked to provide suicide prevention for our community as a whole. So I work directly with the Douglas.
So these are separate programs from the Y.E.S. program.
Yeah. The instructors are not teaching students about suicide prevention. The suicide prevention program is strictly for the community, the adults in our community. So I partner with the Douglas County School District to offer trainings on how to do interventions, and then we do trainings for the community, just how to be alert and aware about mental health issues. If somebody is thinking about suicide, how to talk to them about it, how to get them help, those kind of things. And we've been really fortunate that the public sees us as being proactive. We're, what I know, the only law enforcement agency in the state who is doing suicide prevention work. And I know that Sheriff Spurlock is very supportive of that and making sure that continues so that we can help try to reduce the number of lives that are lost to suicide.
That's great. Anything else?
So we are part of several community coalitions, one of which is the Douglas Arapahoe Suicide Prevention Alliance. We're also a part of the Douglas County Healthy Youth Coalition. We used to focus strictly on substance abuse. We have a new grant from SAMHSA, which is the federal level, that allows us to kind of broaden our scope. So we are still going to be trying to work on substance abuse, alcohol, vaping, those kind of things, but trying to figure out what else can we work as a community so that our community sees that this is a united effort. It's not just the school district. It's not just the sheriff's office.
Right.
We have parents that come, other service providers, that kind of thing, so that, as Sean talked about, ask parents for help, but we're all trying to work together to keep our kids safe.
That's great.
Anything else we want to do?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much for having us out. That's the beauty of editing right there. Thanks so much again for coming out. This has been a great episode. Again, if you want to listen to any other episodes, you can check us out on all of the different media platforms.
Yeah, all our podcasts, we put them out on social media, Twitter, Facebook. We even do video of all the podcasts on YouTube. So
very good. All right. Well, thank you again. And hopefully we see you out there at the next Parent Academy. And hopefully everyone out there listening that comes across this, you go ahead and get scheduled for one of those Parent Academies as soon as possible. Because if you're raising kids, remember to really pay attention, get involved, and get yourself educated so that you can help educate them. Have a great one, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, on today's podcast.
And remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can always watch these podcasts on YouTube.